Welcome to Brandon Hall Group's Excellence at Work podcast. You will hear from industry leaders covering innovative, cutting-edge business, learning, and HR topics that weave current market research and technology into each episode. Our Excellence at Work podcast is hosted by Brandon Hall Group's Chief Operating Officer and Principal HCM Analyst, Rachel Cook. Hello, and welcome to our Excellence at Work podcast. I'm Rachel Cook. I'm the CEO of Brandon Hall Group and our host of our podcast. And today I have with me Graham Glass that I'd like to warmly welcome. Hi, Graham. How are you?
Hi, Rachel. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you. And Graham is the CEO and founder of Cypher Learning, which Cypher Learning provides learning platforms for millions of users across 20,000 plus organizations around the world. He is an entrepreneur, educator, author, and speaker with more than 20 years of experience in the education and technology fields. And today we're going to be talking about generative AI, and we're going to have a pretty exciting conversation because, as you all know, this topic is a hot topic. It's not going away. We need to embrace it. It's our friend, not foe. Before we dive into some of our discussion here, Graham, can you share with a little bit about your background and how you got started, or what prompted you to start and find Cypher Learning?
Yeah, I'd love to, Rachel. And to understand my life story arc, I'll take you back to the UK when I was just a little kid. And I went to one of the top schools in the UK called Haberdashers. And I was extremely lucky. I had a great education. It was really fun. It wasn't high pressure. I learned a mix of subjects. And I do remember one sunny day when I was 17 learning math, thinking, these teachers, I think, have a really good lifestyle. It must be a lot of fun teaching all these kids. Maybe one day I'll be a teacher. And I still remember that 1 minute in my life where I thought that. But as it was, I got my undergrad degree in computer science. Then I moved to Dallas, Texas. I did my graduate work in computer science. And while I was there, out of the blue, I was contacted by one of the professors who said, hey, would you like to teach computer science? And I'd never really taught anything in my life formally. I had no educational background, no training. I'd never given a single class. But I had this instinctive feel like I would really enjoy it and be good at it. So I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to. And so I went to get my first lecture, and I was so excited. I couldn't go to sleep that night. It was really, really enjoyable. So I remember in the back of my mind thinking, hey, maybe I'll be a professor one day, but then I didn't. And then I went on to start my first company, which was a training company. So my first company was, in fact, teaching computer science with a whole band of instructors that I had trained and hired all over the United States, teaching people like IBM and Northern Telecom, Bell Northern Research. But I'm also a computer science guy by trade, and I started really wanting to build products. That's my most enjoyable thing. So then I kind of went off on a tangent to education, and I built some award-winning products in the area of distributed computing. And then about 12 or so years ago, I was at the point in my life where it's time to start a new company. I just sold my previous company. And I thought, I want to do a company at the intersection of my two passions, which is education and technology. So I started Cypher Learning. And the idea being is if you have a really, really powerful underlying software platform that should allow people to teach and learn much quicker than they've done in the past. Because honestly, I looked at the learning platforms of the day and I just thought they were really, really bad and antiquated. So that's why I started Cypher Learning. And we had dipped our toes into AI previous to generative AI. But as you mentioned, generative AI just exploded on the scene. And I like to think we probably have adopted it quicker than any other company. So that's where we are right now. We're used worldwide by businesses, schools, universities. I regularly talk with L&D. I was chatting with L&D a couple of weeks ago. And that's how I got where I am now.
And you do have a pretty robust and easy to use platform that allows you to create content, especially for the instructor, whether it's in K through 12 or beyond. So I think it's really exciting for the learning professionals to have the ability to have access to this type of content development. And what from what you're seeing, what can you go a little bit more, or can you expand on the topic of generative AI? What is it? How can the business start to apply it now?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, I'd
some
love to.
are.
So it's interesting for learning platforms. So the typical use cases, say let's just say a year ago in the distant past, were you use a platform like ours, you would create you create a shell of a course because you're going to deploy it on our platform, and then you would either build it by hand, that course. So you build module one and you type it all in and drag and drop videos and images and quizzes and all that kind of stuff. Or you would buy an off the shelf bit of content. Maybe it's packaged up as SCORM, or maybe it's packaged up as LTI, or you would use off the shelf content from a variety of sources, like Coursera is one example, Go One. And then once you had got the course created one way or the other, then you would deploy it and people would log on, take the course, and we would give them AI powered recommendations of additional courses to take, and we'd monitor their progress and analyze it and report on it, etc. But we never really thought too much about the content creation side. Like we had a really nice editor for building content, but we basically said, well, it's you're going to be building the content completely on your own, or you're going to be buying it from someone else. And so we had integrations with Go One and Coursera and edX and Udemy and LinkedIn, etc. But when generative AI comes along, that kind of changes the equation for us. So a little bit background on what is generative AI. So, in the past, when people talk about AI, they normally talk about you give it a problem, create me a new chemical, or create me a new process, and maybe the AI would do it. But people weren't used to an AI that you could talk to in regular language. And not only would it give you an answer, but you could say, well, tell me more about this. And it might generate you a paragraph or an entire page or more about anything at all. And I remember when I first started using ChatGPT, I started off something really simple like, what is 2 plus 2? And it gets 4. It's like, okay, but that was quite easy. Okay, well, teach me a little bit about arithmetic. And he would say, okay, let's get going. What do you know so far? It's like, wow, it's actually using the Socratic method to teach me arithmetic. I wasn't expecting that. But then I would say, well, what about calculus? Can what's the solution to this? And it just, any question I asked it usually had a really good answer. And I remember thinking, wow, this is incredible. You could use this in so many things. And then it's like, bing, including actually building a course. So when we realized that it could actually expound on almost anything, then we started dabbling just a little bit. So this is actually what happened, probably about a year ago. So we thought, well, in a platform like ours, maybe we could use it to generate a question bank. That's like an easy one. So we'd say, hey, give me 5 true or false questions about, how to be a digital marketing person. And easy, like here we are, bing, 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 bing. So we integrated that into our platform, and we created question banks automatically, and that was really nice. It saves a lot of time. But then we thought, well, that's not that amazing. Like, what about written assessments? And you have to understand, when you come from the learning platform space, we usually would thought of content coming from somewhere else. So we were focused more on using generative AI to create the assessment side. So we built written assessments and rubrics and group assessments, and then we had like a really, really robust set of assessment tools, all linked back to competencies. But then you start thinking, well, what about the actual course itself? So then we started doing some more experiments, and after about a week of experimentation, we realized we can actually build the entire thing. We can pull in images, we can generate synthetic imagery using generative AI, which is really good at building images. Pretty soon, we're going to be able to generate videos. We can create the module outline, the modules themselves, all the content, the whole thing. So then we spent a lot of really intense engineering time figuring out all the bits and pieces. And before you know it, we're using generative AI to create entire courses, really pretty high quality. But getting back to the original question, generative AI, you can ask it a question and you can generate small bits of content all the way to really robust bits of content in 50 languages, and it will generally respond to you in seconds. So this is quite amazing technology.
It is amazing, and the ability to create content and to be and the creativity of it, not just creating content or presentations, but you can be so much more creative right now in an instant. That's what's exciting. What do you think about some of the jobs that are at risk for being replaced? We're going to probably see a lot more of these tools being used for self-service or an assistant. Some of the basic level client service interactions. So, what do you see? Like, how should the workplace, or how should we prepare for some of these jobs being replaced, and how do we make sure that the people that are being replaced, what can they do to advance or to reskill?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, first of all, I don't really think there are any jobs in L&D that are at risk, just for your audience. And I'll come back to that in a few minutes because I have quite a
Mm-hmm.
lot of experience in that area. I think the jobs that will be replaced the first will be the jobs that are pretty tedious. I mean, my guess is that a lot of people who go to work and go, "Oh my goodness, this job is so boring. I just do the same thing again and again and again." They probably realize this can be replaced unless it involves like a high degree of physicality. But even those jobs will be replaced because humanoid robots are coming fairly soon as well. So I'd
Mm-hmm.
say any job which is really tedious, it's fairly algorithmic, that is ripe for replacement by an AI. But the industries themselves are going to change. So it might well be that the industry that you are in is actually going to go away, not just your job, but like the entire industry, because AI does enable all kinds of new kinds of industries to be born as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say, first of all, just the really, really, like if you are an insurance claim inspector and you visit a car and you look and see the scratches and stuff, I mean, vision is getting so good. That's, I think, quite algorithmic. You can have a little robot scanner and scans your car and says, "Yeah, you got dinged. That's going to cost you X." I mean, that would be an easy one to replace. Um, but like I say, I think that what's happening is people are realizing that when you're teamed up with an AI, you can do more. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all about staying one step ahead of, well, the AI in its own can do this, but the AI plus me can do X. And so everyone basically has to figure out how to raise their game at this point. Um,
Right.
so I think that's where we are as an industry. But it's going to be very interesting times because there's going to be brand new industries. So if
Mm-hmm.
you look at, say, Apple Glass and what they're doing there, the world is obviously going to be moving into AR and VR, and it might take 3 years, it might take 5 years, because it's mostly about the hardware getting cheaper and getting more compact. And then for example, courseware. Well, right now, if I'm building a course, you can use generative AI using Cypher platform in minutes, and then you personalize it. But when everyone starts using VR, everyone's going to want VR courses, and old flat courses and a TV screen monitor are not going to cut it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're going to have people who become experts in that, building
Mm-hmm.
3D immersive synthetic simulated environments. That job doesn't even exist right now, but that's where humans are going to have to go to keep up with the technology.
Sure. I was just at an event last week and I was testing out the VR in the metaverse. And they were talking, how it's being used to onboard employees and also to train and to share data. And then, on the personal side, potentially you could be going to a concert in the metaverse where you're at one location and your friend is at, you and I can go to a concert. You're in the UK right now, and I'm in Florida, so we could be. watching a concert. So that's a pretty,
Different time zones.
I'm not sure how I feel about that. I don't want to get to the point where we're never leaving our house.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's a little tangent, but it's quite interesting, and that is,
Hmm.
it's really it happens again and again where a new technology comes along, and
Hmm.
our first inclination about what that technology is going to do is to take an existing experience and maybe make it a bit more sophisticated.
Hmm.
So, as you were saying, well, we put on these VR gears and we're at a concert, but in the future, things like entertainment are going to change radically because of AI. So, for example, right now, if you look at the movie industry, they have a single script, they get a single set of actors, and you record the movie, and then a bunch of people go and watch the movie. But with an AI, you can generate the movie, in real time based on anything that you want. I'm not saying it can do that now, but it will be in a couple of years' time. You'll be able to say, I'm in the mood for a murder mystery set in Hawaii, and I want this part in the plot, and I want it to be an action comedy, and then it'll just immediately start playing, and it will have been generated for you, not for anybody else. Maybe if it's really great, you can say, hey, I want to share this with my friends. So the idea that there's going to be this single movie and script writers for this movie and all that kind of stuff, that doesn't have to be there anymore because the AI is so powerful, it can build a brand new one every single time.
That's
And
pretty
you could say, I
fascinating.
want to have a movie that spans a week, and then as
Hmm.
the week goes by, it incorporates things in my week into the movie. So I don't want to digress too much, but that's coming for sure.
Pretty fascinating. So coming back to the workplace and to what are some of the things that you can advise on for companies or for learning leaders now that are exploring these types of applications or your application in particular? What
Yeah.
what should they be looking for? What
So
are the things that they must think about so that they have the best opportunity to implement this and optimize it?
well, I've been giving a lot of presentations to L&D groups all over the United States, and so I'm going to draw in my answer to you. I'm going to draw upon a lot of my experiences there. So L&D staff are usually they're under budgeted, so they're resource constrained. They normally have a whole backlog of various different kinds of courses that they're working on. And because the world is changing quicker, their backlog is probably increasing because they're expected to build more and more content about more and more things. And one of the great things about generative AI is that it allows you to build content quicker. So the obvious thing is, well, an LD person, it's like fantastic tool because now you can start working at your backlog. You can keep up with the pace of life, um, and you can automate a lot of the drudgery involved in building a course. Because let's face it, building a course, it's not all it's not all fun. It's some of it's fun, some of it's actually kind of a drag. So one of the things that I demoed for these L&D teams is the Cypher platform, building courses using generative AI. And it would be a fun, it's almost like a party trick. You would say, hey, tell me what kind of course you'd like to build right now. And so they would say, like there was one group that was in Austin, Texas. So they said, well, let's build a course all about Austin, Texas. And I say, great. And what tone of voice do you want it to be? So I would do this kind of party trick and I would say to them, what kind of course do you want me to build? And they would say, I'd like a course all about Austin, Texas. And then I would say, okay, so we'll build a course on that. Do you want AI generated imagery or do you want to use imagery from the web? Do you want it to include videos of Austin? What kind of persona do you want it to be? A humorous course? Do you want it to be very academic? Do you want quizzes? Do you want how many competencies do you want this course to be able to track? And so they would just throw out a whole bunch of requirements, and in the presentation, I would just fill those requirements into a little box, and at the end, I would say, "Okay, generate." And so the wheels would be spinning, and I would continue to talk for a little bit about generative AI, say, and then 10 minutes later, I would say, "Okay, let's take a look at the course in Austin." And consistently, people's jaws would drop, like they'd never seen something that sophisticated work that quickly with such high quality results. I would always say, the Cypher platform is not building 100% of the course. It's building about 80% because you always want to spend the last 20% fine tuning it, reviewing it, adding your own personal anecdotes, moving things around a little bit. So when the generative AI does its work, it's not set in stone, but it gives you like this almost finished product that you can then tweak. And so everyone was saying, this is amazing because now my job just becomes so much easier. And I can spend my time, all the time that the generative AI gives back to you, I can spend that 20% really fine tuning it. So the L&D teams, I mean, I think so far they have reacted extremely positively. Like this stuff is going to be a game changer for them, and it's going to give them so much time back to relieve the drudgery. But
I
the other
agree.
thing I point out to them is this kind of approach that Cypher Learning has taken allows you to create lots of variations on a course very quickly. So rather than just generate it one time and say, hey, that's great, let's just then fine tune it, I'll say just generate 5 of them. I mean, to give it an idea of the cost, we only charge like $5 to create that entire course. It's not like $10,000 and you're going to be really, really careful. It's like generate 5 different versions of the same course for 25 bucks. Find the one course that speaks to you because they're all going to be a little bit different, and then start with that one and evolve it to the finished product. So not only does it save you tons of time, but it now allows you rapid iteration of course design that really wasn't possible before because humans didn't have as many hours in a day to generate 5 different versions of the same course. Now, there's a whole lot more to say about the learner side of the equation, but this specific answer was addressing the course creation L&D side of the equation.
Well, let's talk about the learner. So and impact. How do you measure the impact of this of of the content, and what does that look like from a learner
Well,
perspective?
if you look at the learner side of the equation in the business, there's typically 2 primary use cases of using the learning platform. The first use case is the one that everybody hates, which is compliance. So compliance is like every year we drag out this course, everyone has to sit down, get a cup of coffee, spend 3 hours clicking through the course, and then you're done. And that's not learning in the flow of work. That's just like something you got to do for legal compliance once a year.
Mm-hmm.
Putting that aside, then there is the everyday stuff and this could be any worker. I could be in technical support and I needed to know how do I deal with a difficult customer who's based in Brazil, as an example. So I'm not picking on Brazil, by the way, Brazilian, just picked a country.
Sure.
It could be a marketing person. Hey, how do I create a really good icon for an electrical product? Or it could be, hey, what are 3 different great ways to do team building exercises? So these are the questions that people have all the time in business. And most people do not want to go and search through an old, course catalog and take a 2-hour course on something quick. They just want to I need the answer right now. And that's an area that I think learning platforms don't do a very good job right now because most of them are, it's a jukebox of PDFs or a jukebox of courses, and people just go to Google. I mean, that's what I would do. I just go to Google, dealing with difficult customers. How do I build an icon? So what's the point of having a learning platform if most people just go into Google? It's kind of a waste of time. So what you really want to do is you want to use the power of generative AI, which Cypher Learning has already shown can do an amazing job of creating formal courses and provide that generative AI directly to the end user. So, for example, if anyone in the workplace could say, how do I deal with a difficult customer in Brazil and get an incredibly detailed, well thought out response with images and recommendations and links to related topics, and maybe even a button that you can click where you can talk with an AI expert if you've got questions still. If you can do that in 5 seconds, then at that point the person's going to do, well, I'm going to use the generative AI first and Google is my backup plan versus I'm going to use Google first and then my learning platform is the backup plan.
Mhm. I don't know
And
about you,
so,
but
so,
I,
so
mhm,
basically, this is the way that I think things are going to go, where people are going to be using generative AI throughout the day in their flow. And that's
mhm.
something that Cypher Learning is going to be releasing later this year, which is the same power of generative AI built into the learning platform, but directly to the workers in the field.
So it'll help streamline the production and ease of development, delivery, access. Everyone can have access, um, and it's going to just transform the way that we operate. We already are, but right now I think everybody's at a little bit of a different maturity of embracing it and
Yeah,
feeling comfortable with it and actually utilizing it if you're not traditionally in a learning environment. So
yeah.
it will. I know that it will change drastically over the next year here and
I mean, I
sooner.
think one of the things that people don't really fully internalize is how personalized it is. So let
Mm-hmm.
me give you an example, and this will also provide a specific, explicit use case of the difference between the kind of material that an L&D person can create and the kind of material that an end user can generate. So I'm a home recording enthusiast, and so I've got this electronic keyboard called a Roland Phantom 8. And I have very specific set of an instrument. I use the Apple Logic recording software and a few others. And I wanted to set up my home studio, and so I used the Cypher Learning platform to do that. And what I did was I went and said I want to build a course, and it goes, "What do you want your course to be about?" I said, "Setting up a home studio." So that was the title of the course. And then there's a box that says additional instructions. And I go, I want it to take into account a Roland 8 synthesizer, Phantom 8, and Apple Logic, and a few others. And then I said, make it humorous, and I include images and go. So 10 minutes later, it built me the course, but the course was specifically about my combination. It wasn't a generic how to set up a home studio. It was how to set up a home studio with this and this and this, which is quite amazing. And that's why generative AI is way better than searching on Google. Because if I went to Google and said, how do I set up my studio with this and this and this, there's not going to be any video out there that
Mm.
covers that specific use case.
And
And now
you'll
going to
get
the work environment, that's where I said, if I'm a customer support, it's like, how do I deal with a difficult customer who's in Brazil, who is having problems with XYZ? And the generative AI will give you the specific recommendation on that one thing. And no L&D person can create a course that covers every possible scenario. And one of the things that we're doing is we're busy adding functionality where it can incorporate your own private data into the courses and into the end user's generative stuff. So if you're in a particular company with specific processes and patterns and data, it can take that into account as well. So it's like super personalized. So if you're in L&D, don't worry. People aren't expecting you to do that, but it does show you that by providing this power to the end user, you can get incredibly tailored content that there's no other way that you'd be able to get it.
right. And what are you? What do you predict for the future of work next year, 10 years
Future
from
of
now?
work. Well,
Like
so I
sum it
think
up for us for
well, I think that everyone's life's going to continue to get interesting and more
Mhm.
interesting because, first of all, the workplace it's going to, even your industry is going to change. Like, I think the learning platform industry is already changing because you can see now that generative AI means the products are changing and what people are expecting is changing. If you are an educator, your world is changing because you used to be primarily, you know, the person who would provide the content to your audience, but now the audience can get hyper personalized content. So how do you rethink your profession? So I find that everyone's kind of rethinking what's possible. And I think typically in almost any job, there is a way to use AI in order to make your job more interesting, to make you more productive, more interesting. Because it's certainly making the learning platform industry way more interesting and I think way more exciting and productive than we've ever been before. But I would say that one prediction that I've got is that there's going to be more and more autonomous AI helping you. So right now it's quite reactive. So for example, I think, oh, I've got a question. I'm going to go to
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT or I'm going to go to Cypher Learning platform and ask it a question. But the question's like coming out of my brain.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty soon the AI is going to say, oh, by the way, Graham, have you thought about this? Or, hey, Graham, would you like me to set this thing up for you? Yeah, please. And then 5 minutes later, okay, Graham, well, I've set this up for you. I'm going to send you a reminder in 10 days. And
I'm
so
excited.
now it's going to be much more bi-directional than it is now. And needless to say, Cypher Learning is already working on plans for this autonomous agent concept as well. So we're not resting on our laurels.
Well, when you have it ready, I want that personal assistant. So send it my way, please. All right. As we wrap up here, Graham, what are your plans for 2024?
Well, so I think that 2023 has been an incredibly productive year.
Just a
Like
few months,
world class
few
content
months to go.
generation. Pretty soon, world class generative AI on the learner side. So 2024, it's all about rethinking education around an AI centric, because it's not just about taking the way that people used to learn and packaging that with AI. It's really rethinking what's a really cool way to educate people once you have this kind of technology in the background. So I think the whole idea of personalized learning journey, autonomous agents, things occurring out of schedule, like, hey, I wasn't thinking about it, but it just brought something to my attention and it's offered to teach me about it. Hey, let me take a coffee break and let it, teach me about something because it knows what I'm interested in. So I think 2024 is going to be it's going to be the year of the proactive AI engaging with you rather than just the other way around.
I anticipate that, and also I'm looking forward to seeing your team next year in 2024. You're a sponsor of HCM Excellence, and hopefully you're going to be sharing some interesting examples of your platform or client use case and in the tech talk track. So
Yeah,
that's
we certainly
exciting
will be.
for all
Looking
of you
forward
to,
to it.
yeah, yeah. So hopefully you're gonna bring some of that cool devices, and we'll have a really cool environment or user experience.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, thank you, Graham. Thank you for joining me today and for sharing your thoughts and examples of what you're seeing and how you are working with your clients. It's all fascinating and definitely, I was just at an event last week and one of the senior leaders in tech for this large global organization, referenced, and it really kind of stuck with me about if you're afraid of AI, you're not going to lose employees because of AI, but you are, or if you're an employee that's afraid of AI, you're not going to the workplace isn't going to lose you to AI, but if you're not utilizing AI, you're not embracing AI, that's where you're going to get lost, unfortunately. So,
Yep,
as
I agree.
I don't know if I said it poetically, however, but we all need to. We're all in this together, and it's not something to be afraid of. It's something to be excited about. There's so many cool things coming out in ways that we can leveraged, utilized, help our jobs be even better and easier if you're a manager, a leader, a learning professional, whatever it might be. And even outside of learning, how you're going to apply it in every aspect of what you're doing. The
Yeah,
future
AI
is
is an
here.
amazing tool, so it'd be silly not to use it.
Mhm. Thank you everyone for listening in, and Graham,
Thank you,
until
April.
next time, take care.